Rikers Island, a name that evokes images of isolation and danger. For decades, this sprawling complex has stood as a symbol of New York City's struggle with crime, punishment, and the challenge of maintaining order behind bars. Its very location, cut off from the city by water, only adds to its reputation as a place apart, a world governed by its own rules, where every day is a test of survival. Behind those walls, violence is a daily threat, impacting both inmates and officers. The tension is palpable, with every shift bringing new uncertainties. Correctional officers walk the corridors knowing that at any moment routine can turn to chaos. For the men and women who work here, the line between safety and danger is razor thin, and the consequences of a single misstep can be devastating. In the years before our story, assaults on staff surged, creating an atmosphere of fear. Reports of attacks became more frequent, and the sense of unease grew with each incident. Officers began to question whether the system was doing enough to protect them, or if they were being asked to bear the brunt of a broken institution. The rising violence wasn't just a statistic, it was a daily reality that shaped every interaction, every decision, and every moment spent inside those walls. This isn't just about numbers, it's about a moment when that danger became horrifyingly real for one officer. The fear that haunted the halls materialized in a single life-altering event, one that would leave scars not just on the victim, but on the entire community of Rikers Island. It was a stark reminder that behind every statistic is a human being, vulnerable to the unpredictable violence that can erupt at any time. The attack at the George Motchan detention center, captured on surveillance, shocked the city and ignited debate about justice and reform. The footage, grainy and unsettling, spread quickly, forcing the public to confront the harsh realities faced by those who work in corrections. News outlets replayed the incident, and suddenly the struggles of Rikers Island were thrust into the spotlight, demanding answers and accountability. The events of February 10, 2018 were the result of shifting policies and rising tensions. As the city pushed for reforms aimed at reducing incarceration and improving conditions, the reality inside the jail grew more volatile. Staff meetings became more urgent, and headlines warned of a system under strain. The collision of new policies and old problems set the stage for a crisis that no one could ignore. Reforms clashed with the harsh realities of managing violent offenders. While the intention was to create a safer, more humane environment, the transition was anything but smooth. Officers found themselves caught between the demands of policy and the unpredictable behavior of those in their custody. The struggle to maintain order while respecting new guidelines created confusion, frustration, and ultimately, danger. The assault on Officer Jean Souffrant became a flashpoint, forcing the city to confront the consequences of its choices. The aftermath was immediate and intense, emergency responders rushing to the scene, colleagues shaken and angry, and city leaders scrambling to respond. The incident became a rallying cry for those demanding change, and a sobering lesson for those who believed reform would be easy. This is the story of a system in crisis, where the balance between rehabilitation and safety is tested every day. It's a story about the people who risk their lives to keep order, the policies that shape their world, and the ongoing struggle to find justice in a place defined by conflict. As we look deeper into what happened on that February day, we confront the difficult questions at the heart of Rikers Island, and the future of corrections in America. February 10, 2018, began like any other night in New York City. The city's lights flickered to life as dusk settled in, and the world outside continued its usual rhythm, unaware of the tension brewing behind the walls of one of its most notorious detention centers. At the George Motchan Detention Center, a sprawling complex on Rikers Island, the evening shift was underway. Officers and staff moved through the halls performing their routines, while inmates gathered in common areas, their voices echoing off the concrete walls. Officer Jean Souffrant, a seasoned veteran with years of experience, was assigned to oversee a particularly volatile unit filled with young, unpredictable inmates. He was respected by his colleagues for his calm demeanor and professionalism, but even the most experienced officers know that every shift carries its own risks. Just days earlier, Officer Souffrant had written up an inmate for breaking the rules, a routine act for any corrections officer, but one that can have serious, even dangerous consequences inside jail walls. In this environment, even small actions can ripple outwards, creating waves of resentment and anger. For some inmates, especially those affiliated with gangs, a write-up isn't just a disciplinary measure, It's a direct challenge to their authority and reputation among their peers. Retaliation, whether subtle or violent, is always a possibility. As the evening wore on, surveillance cameras captured subtle but unmistakable signs of unrest. Inmates exchanged glances and whispered to one another, moving with a sense of purpose that suggested something was about to happen. The tension in the air was almost palpable. Officer Souffrant, meanwhile, remained focused on his paperwork and daily responsibilities, unaware that he had become the target of a carefully coordinated plan. The routine nature of his work masked the danger that was quietly building around him. Suddenly, the atmosphere in the unit shifted. The usual background noise faded, replaced by a tense silence. Officers and inmates alike could sense that something was about to erupt, but few could have predicted just how quickly things would spiral out of control. Stephen Espinal, a young inmate awaiting trial for attempted murder, stepped forward. He took the lead, orchestrating a diversion that drew attention away from the real threat. At the same time, other inmates moved to block the corridors, cutting off any chance of escape or intervention. The stage was set for a violent act that would change everything, a moment that would shatter the illusion of routine and leave a lasting mark on everyone involved. The attack was sudden and brutal. Espinal lunged, punching Officer Souffrant in the face and sending him crashing to the floor. Instantly, 3 other inmates swarmed, kicking and stomping him with calculated ferocity. The assault was coordinated, relentless, and left the officer defenseless. Other inmates formed a barrier, isolating Souffrant from help. The attackers continued until he lost consciousness, then calmly blended back into the crowd. Their message was clear: they controlled the unit. Only after the violence ended did other officers reach the scene, finding Souffrant unresponsive. The surveillance footage captured every moment, providing undeniable evidence. The impact of this attack would ripple far beyond Rikers Island. The attackers were young, organized, and united by gang loyalty. At Rikers, gang identity dictates power and demands violent retribution for perceived slights. Espinal, already facing attempted murder charges, led the assault as retaliation for a disciplinary ticket. This was not a crime of passion, it was a calculated act, planned and executed with chilling precision. The gang's message, they, not the Department of Correction, ruled the unit. The attack exposed the deep influence gangs wield inside the jail. These groups operate with their own rules, capable of orchestrating complex, violent acts. For many, loyalty to the gang outweighs fear of punishment. The willingness to risk more prison time to uphold a code of violence is a stark reality at Rikers. After the attack, chaos erupted as officers rushed to save Souffrant, who was critically injured. The scene was frantic. Every second counted as they worked desperately to stabilize him, their training and instincts kicking in amid the confusion and fear. The weight of the moment was heavy, as colleagues realized the severity of his wounds and the real danger they all faced. He was rushed to the hospital, sirens piercing the night, as medical teams prepared for the worst. Doctors quickly discovered a fractured C2 vertebra, a life-threatening spinal injury that could leave him paralyzed, and bleeding on the brain. The emergency room became a battleground for his survival, with specialists working through the night, fighting to keep him alive and prevent further damage. The prognosis was grim. Paralysis or death was a real possibility. Family members gathered in the waiting area, clinging to hope as doctors explained the risks and uncertainties. The fear of losing a loved one or seeing him forever changed weighed heavily on everyone present. The Correction Officers Union released images of Souffrant in intensive care, highlighting the brutal reality their members face. These photos were a stark reminder of the dangers correctional officers encounter daily, risks that often go unseen by the public, but are all too real for those who serve behind prison walls. The attack shattered not just his body but his sense of security and his career. The uniform he once wore with pride now sat empty, a symbol of a life interrupted. The emotional toll was immense, as he grappled with the loss of his identity and the uncertainty of his future. Recovery would be long and uncertain, with lasting physical and emotional scars. Each day brought new challenges, painful therapy sessions, moments of frustration, and the slow realization that some wounds might never fully heal. The journey ahead was daunting, requiring strength, resilience, and the support of loved ones. The incident put a human face on the cost of jail violence. It forced colleagues and the community to confront the reality that these are not just statistics, but real people whose lives are forever changed by a single moment of brutality. It's a cost measured in shattered lives and trauma, not just numbers on a page. Families are left to pick up the pieces, supporting each other through grief, anxiety, and the long road to recovery. The ripple effects of violence extend far beyond the victim, touching everyone who cares for them. For those on the front lines, the risk is ever present and deeply personal. Every day, they put on their uniforms knowing what's at stake, not just for themselves but for their families and communities. The human cost of violence in our jails is a burden they carry, often in silence, but it is one that demands our attention and compassion. The response was immediate and intense. Commissioner Cynthia Brand condemned the attack, promising full accountability for the perpetrators. The union, furious, blamed recent reforms for creating unsafe conditions. They released booking photos of the attackers, fueling public outrage. The story dominated headlines, with the surveillance video sparking citywide debate. Inmates faced new felony charges, but officers argued the problem was systemic. Without major policy changes, they warned, such attacks would continue. The incident became a symbol of a deeper crisis within the jail system. The assault reignited fierce debate over jail policy. In 2016, New York ended solitary confinement for inmates under 21, aiming for a more humane system. Officers warned this would embolden violent inmates by removing a key deterrent. Previously, attackers would have been isolated immediately. Now, alternative units were less restrictive. The union saw a direct link between the policy change and Souffrant's injuries. Reformers argued the violence reflected deeper cultural problems, not just policy. They called for better staffing and training, while officers demanded the return of stricter measures. The city was forced to confront whether safety and reform could truly coexist. The debate was no longer theoretical, it was a matter of life and death. The attack on Souffrant echoed a national crisis in corrections. Rikers Island symbolizes decades of violence, neglect, and systemic dysfunction. The incident highlighted the conflict between humane reform and the need for security. Reformers push for rehabilitation and reduced incarceration. Officers demand safety and order. The assault showed how these goals can collide, fueling an us versus them mentality. Finding a balance between dignity and security remains the central challenge. New York's plan to close Rikers and build smaller jails faces delays and fierce opposition. Incidents like this are used as arguments against reform, underscoring the stakes. The future of jail reform depends on learning from these tragedies and finding real solutions. Officer Souffrant's story is just one chapter in the ongoing struggle over jail reform. The questions raised by his assault remain urgent as cities nationwide grapple with change. The way we treat inmates and staff reflects our values and commitment to justice. Staying informed helps us move beyond headlines and understand the real issues. The debate is complex with no easy answers. Balancing safety and rehabilitation is a constant challenge. By following stories like this, we can advocate for solutions that are both effective and humane. The conversation about Rikers and jail reform is far from over. Stay engaged, stay informed, and be part of shaping the future of justice in our communities.